After the college entrance exam ended, my illegitimate sister started trending online. Everyone said the prestigious Mu family produced geniuses. The elder sister was the top liberal arts scorer, and the younger one was #1 in dance. Just when that illegitimate girl tried to use the hype to work her way into the family, I had someone break her legs. Chapter 1. On the day of my graduation banquet, my father brought the illegitimate girl to the party, and that girl knelt on both knees, with tears streaming down her face. She begged my mother to let her into the family. Everyone around was stunned. Just as the bodyguards stepped forward to drag her away, my mother stopped them with a single look. I stood off to the side with my arms crossed, amused, just waiting to see what kind of nonsense that girl could spew. She sobbed with a pitiful look. At least I have Mu blood in me. Please, out of kindness, let me into the family. I can sing, I can dance, and I'm not bad looking. I won't embarrass the Mu family. After saying that, she shuffled forward on her knees, just about to speak again, when the young master of the Han family, standing beside me, recognized her. He pointed at the illegitimate girl, voice full of surprise. Aren't you the top dance student at a university this year? The one who danced Sunset? Evelyn's eyes lit up, thrilled to be recognized. She nodded eagerly. She was hoping the Han boy would say more praise, but instead, he clapped and burst out laughing. My grandma said your dance had a proud, unyielding grace to it. Who knew you could kneel so fast? Right after that, I heard people around me stifling their laughter, and Evelyn's face instantly turned pale, watching her about to faint. I didn't step in to defend her. Instead, I stood with a glass of wine, smiling as she made a fool of herself. As the ridicule around us grew, my father's face darkened. He had brought Evelyn here. Now she was being humiliated, and it made him look bad. Yet even seeing the male head of the household lose face, no one dared to step up to defuse the situation. After all, my father had already squandered the Mu family fortune, while my mother's side had seized the right opportunities, climbing all the way to the upper echelons of City A. Everyone came to my banquet today because of my mother, so even with my father publicly forcing my mother to accept his illegitimate daughter, for the sake of future business dealings, no one would help him save face. I coldly watched Evelyn getting utterly humiliated. Only then did I slowly set down my glass and clap my hands. The bodyguards stationed at the door immediately came in. One grabbed each of Evelyn's arms and dragged her up from the floor. I smiled politely at the guests around us. So sorry about this. The security arrangements at this banquet clearly weren't good enough. Please excuse the disturbance. Then I gave the bodyguards a signal. They instantly understood and dragged the struggling Evelyn out of the hall, and finally threw her out of the Mu family mansion. My father's face turned ashen as he watched Evelyn Mu get tossed out. But there was nothing he could do. He smashed his wine glass with a dark expression and stormed out of the banquet. And the mother sitting at the head of the table wore a kind and gentle expression the entire time, smiling as she watched me put Evelyn in her place. Chapter 2. After the banquet ended, I changed out of the elaborate gown and put on a simple cheapao, with my hair casually pinned up. The maid brought me back to the living room. Inside, my father and mother sat facing each other, and kneeling on the floor beside them was Evelyn, the girl who had just been thrown out. She was now wearing a white dress, looking all pitiful as she wiped away her tears. When she saw me come down the stairs, my mother waved me over to sit beside her. She looked at Evelyn kneeling on the floor and asked nonchalantly, "So you really want to be part of the Mu family that badly?" Evelyn nodded eagerly, just about to continue pleading, but to her surprise, my mother agreed without hesitation. "Of course you can." Then my mother narrowed her eyes, lips curling into a smile. "If you're willing, I'll hold a press conference tomorrow and announce you as my biological daughter." A flash of shock crossed my father's eyes. He opened his mouth to object, but Evelyn immediately accepted with a trembling voice. "I'm willing. I really am." The words had barely left her lips when my mother turned her head slowly toward my father, still smiling. "But you see, she's not actually my daughter. If you want me to accept her, then everything your father left for my daughter in his will, you must return, down to the last cent." At that, the atmosphere in the room instantly grew tense. My father stared at my mother through gritted teeth, but she just smiled calmly and sipped her tea, utterly unbothered. I lowered my eyes and said nothing. Back then, my grandfather knew my father was useless. so he arranged a business marriage with my mother, a capable woman from a less wealthy family. The daughter she gave birth to inherited her intelligence, which made my grandfather very pleased. He even considered bypassing my idiot father and directly handing over the Mu family to me. But before he could do that, he was diagnosed with cancer and passed away. Fortunately, he left a will, stating that once I turned 18, 20% of Mu Corporation's shares would be transferred to me. Until then, they were to be kept in my father's custody. But now, 3 months after my birthday, my father was still acting like nothing had happened, refusing to hand them over. Looking at it now, it's obvious he planned to give them to his illegitimate daughter instead. Seeing my father remain silent, my mother let out a soft laugh, then turned to the butler and instructed, "If the master is unwilling, then please escort this young lady out," as she watched her ticket into high society slip away. In a moment of panic, Evelyn cried out to my father, "Daddy, think about me and ah." Before she could finish, my father finally seemed to make up his mind. He grabbed the butler, who was about to step forward. Through clenched teeth, he said, "Fine, I'll give it." My mother nodded in satisfaction. She clapped her hands lightly, and the lawyer who had been waiting in the next room stepped forward. He took documents from his briefcase, ready for my father to sign. Seeing everything was settled, my mother smiled and patted my shoulder. "Oriana, you're going to be a big sister. Now that everything's quiet, why don't you take Evelyn for a little tour around the house?" I smiled and nodded, then reached out a hand toward the kneeling Evelyn. No matter how unwilling she was, in front of my mother, she had to play the obedient girl and took my hand. The sharp edge of the diamond bracelet on my wrist scraped harshly against her already bruised wrist. She tried to pull away slightly, but I held on tight, while my father was busy haggling with the lawyer. I led Evelyn out of the living room with long, purposeful strides. Chapter 3. Before its decline, the Mu family was once considered one of the elite clans in City A. So naturally, the mansion was nothing short of magnificent. I dragged Evelyn along the corridor until we reached the courtyard. Noticing that there were no servants nearby, she dropped the act without hesitation, forcefully shaking off my hand. I leaned lazily against one of the corridor pillars, watching as she anxiously examined her own bruised arms and legs. Dancers fear nothing more than scars on their bodies, and Evelyn was no exception. Seeing how nervous she looked, I feigned surprise and said, "Oh dear, clumsy me, I didn't even notice my little sister got hurt." I took a step forward as if to help, but she slapped my hand away. "Get lost, you two-faced bitch." She hit me hard. I looked at the redness spreading on my hand. My face remained unreadable. Then I slowly raised my head, let out a cold laugh, and said, "And what exactly do you think you are? You dare lay hands on me? A mere bastard. Just moments ago you were kneeling to my mother, full of gratitude for letting you into the Mu family, and now you've got the nerve to call me fake." As I spoke, I looked her up and down with mocking contempt. Evelyn had been spoiled and arrogant since she was a child. Hearing that, she almost exploded on the spot. Ignoring everything our father told her about staying low-key, she snapped with a sneer, "Oriana, don't get cocky too soon. So what if I'm illegitimate? Haven't you heard marriage is a woman's second chance at life? I'm gorgeous, the top dance student. When father arranges a marriage alliance for me, I'll live far better than you ever will. And who are you? So what if you're the liberal arts top scorer? You're not as pretty, you're not as alluring, no man would ever marry you." She looked me up and down with smug satisfaction, like she'd just found a lifeline. I stared at her triumphant expression, too bored to even respond. Instead, I turned the ring on my finger, rotating the sharp side inward. Then, in one swift motion, I grabbed Evelyn by the hair and slapped her across the face several times with my other hand. The sharp edges of the jewelry left cuts across her delicate face, alongside a few very ugly handprints. She immediately crouched down, clutching her cheek, and I followed it up with a kick, sending her tumbling from the corridor into the flower bushes. Amid the chaos, I heard her cursing furiously, but I simply kicked her back again just as she tried to crawl out. Then I finally spoke. "You must be new here, so let me spell it out. I'm not someone you want to mess with. So what if your last name is Mu now? To me, The Move family's just a bunch of beggars. You're nothing more than a pretty puppet who knows how to dance, here to entertain others, and yet you think sharing half my blood means you're entitled to what's mine? As I spoke, I stepped on her hand that was clinging to the stone floor and ground my heel into it. Sure enough, I heard her whimper. Through gasps, Evelyn cried, "You treat me like this, father won't let you get away with it." I looked at her pitiful state and chuckled. Him? That worthless clown who drove the company into bankruptcy? Please, his threats are less scary than you telling me you'd take a shit in the Moo family's living room. I straightened up, brushed imaginary dust off my dress, and said slowly, "No one's coming to save you tonight. Climb out if you can. If not, sleep in the garden. Everyone in the Moo household now answers to me, so you'd better behave." With that, I casually picked up the folding fan placed on the veranda and strolled back to my room, fanning myself as I went. Chapter 4. Evelyn had been spoiled and pampered since birth. She had never been humiliated like this before. The very next day, she ran straight to my father to complain. When I was summoned to the living room, I saw my furious father and Evelyn with her face half covered, playing the pitiful victim. My father pointed at Evelyn's face and demanded, "Oriana, why did you hit your sister? How can you be so cruel?" I had just woken up. I ignored his anger and instead looked at Evelyn, who was hiding behind him. "Didn't I already tell you? Instead of running to daddy to snitch, you might as well take a shit right here in the living room. That would scare me more." My father yanked my arm. "Answer my question. Stop bullying your sister." I rolled my eyes at the ceiling and shook off his hand. "She's just an illegitimate brat. I hit her. Do I really need a reason? Instead of questioning me right now, maybe you should focus on explaining to the shareholders of your last company why you're bankrupt again." As I said that, I saw that flicker of guilt flash across his face. I let out a cold laugh, and just before leaving, I gave that illegitimate girl the middle finger. My father, seeing how shameless I was acting, got so angry he almost had a stroke. When my mother returned home and he rushed to complain again, she brushed it off with just a few calm words, and when he tried to push it further, she smiled sweetly and struck where it hurt. "If you keep talking, I just might cancel the welcome banquet I planned for Evelyn." The moment she said that, my father shut his mouth. Even Evelyn, still hiding behind him, went silent. I knew exactly why Evelyn was so desperate about her face. My mother had a new product launch for the Moo family company coming up. The network of high society connections in City A was supposed to be warmed up at my graduation banquet. But thanks to my idiot father, who's better at ruining things than fixing them, the illegitimate daughter he brought in completely destroyed that plan. So my mother had no choice but to use the excuse of welcoming the long-lost daughter to throw another banquet and reset her social outreach. And Evelyn genuinely thought she was the star of the event. Smug and self-satisfied, she began preparing herself. On the afternoon of the banquet, she even booked a salon appointment to try and fix the facial damage I had caused. Meanwhile, I stayed at the Moo mansion, my phone buzzing constantly with messages on social media. "Heard the Moo family is really letting the illegitimate girl in this time. Is that true?" "It's true." The hostess herself sent out the invitations. The chat exploded with disbelief. "Wait, Oriana didn't skin that girl alive? She's suddenly so well-tempered?" The next moment, the whole group chat burst into laughter. I replied with a deadpan tone. "Her face is swollen from the beating. She's at the salon right now trying to save what's left of it." After that, I threw in a couple more insults aimed at the bastard girl. Most of the rich kids in the group now had a solid idea of how I treated Evelyn. So at tonight's banquet, they certainly wouldn't be showing her any kindness. Chapter 5. When Evelyn returned home from the beauty salon, she happened to arrive just as the butler was having someone deliver a custom-made gown for her. I was sitting in the living room, sipping tea, and with one glance, I saw the excitement on Evelyn's face as she looked at the haute couture dress. A girl blinded by wealth and status but lacking a brain was destined to be cannon fodder in a family like ours. That thought alone made me look at Evelyn with a touch of pity. A pawn, thrown onto the board the moment she logged in. Truly pitiful. Half an hour before the banquet, I casually picked a dress to change into and headed downstairs to wait for the event to begin. Evelyn was sitting in the living room, dressed to the nines. Luxury fabrics clung to her perfectly shaped figure. She looked polished and beautiful, with all the jewelry adding sparkle. She really did seem like a highborn lady, at least in her own eyes. When the banquet began, my mother gave her a brief and perfunctory introduction, then took me, elegantly dressed in a simpler style, to socialize with the guests. The glamorous scene she had imagined, being the star of the evening, adored by all, never happened. Holding a glass of red wine, I stood not far away, smiling as I watched Evelyn sit all alone on the sofa. The rich young heirs and heiresses had gathered in small groups, pointing and whispering about her. After the first round of mingling, my mother finally let me go, telling me to connect with the other second-gen elites of City A. I smiled and nodded, then walked toward the smaller banquet hall where the heirs were gathered. Miss Lee, daughter of the Lee family, one of Moo's closest allies, saw me arrive. She immediately came up and looped her arm through mine. I raised an eyebrow and glanced at Evelyn sitting alone, out of place on the sofa. What? None of you are keeping my dear sister company? The moment I said that, Evelyn looked up sharply and met my gaze. I smiled at her and raised my glass, catching the flicker of hatred that flashed across her eyes. Miss Lee rolled her eyes and scoffed. She's just an illegitimate girl acting all high and mighty. Does she really expect us to approach her first? She even turned up her nose at a top student from one of the smaller families. He tried to talk to her and she hit him with a full-on eye roll. I glanced at Evelyn's smug little face and agreed smoothly. Exactly. What? Does she want me to suck up to her too? Then, as if something had just occurred to me, my lips curled into a playful smile. I leaned closer to Miss Lee and whispered something in her ear. She immediately understood. While Evelyn went to the restroom, Miss Lee shared our little plan in the group chat. When Evelyn returned, she suddenly noticed something had changed. Several heiresses from top families suddenly acted all warm and friendly, looping their arms around her, chatting like they were close friends. She blinked in confusion for a second, but didn't feel anything was off. She happily accepted their sudden kindness. As they chatted, Miss Lee suddenly pointed to a handsome boy not far away, pretending it was casual. That's Diego Ku, the eldest son of the Ku family in City A. He's also the sole heir of his generation. The Ku family is one of the top-tier houses in the city. And Diego himself? Super impressive. We always joke about which one of us will become the future Mrs. Ku. She shot Evelyn a sidelong glance. Sure enough, she saw the greed light up in her eyes. To push it further, Miss Lee added with a sly grin, "Word is, Diego's mom really likes him and is hoping Oriana will marry him." That did it. Evelyn could no longer sit still. If even the Mu family matriarch had approved of him, then he was basically a golden ticket husband. She needed to act fast. If Diego liked her instead, she could climb to the top instantly as the future Mrs. Ku. Even that little bitch Oriana would have to smile and bow to her by then. Miss Lee saw how desperate Evelyn looked. She almost burst out laughing, then added with mock-serious delight, "Diego really loves dance, too, and I heard you study dance, right?" Evelyn gave a demure nod. Miss Lee clapped her hands in exaggerated excitement. "Well, what a coincidence! Want me to introduce you to?" With that, she took Evelyn, who pretended to hesitate but was clearly thrilled, and led her toward Diego. Evelyn, completely entranced by Diego's face, didn't notice the stifled laughter on Miss Lee's face as she turned away. Chapter 6. In City A, the upper class is almost entirely closed off, which means most of us have known each other for over a decade. We all know exactly what kind of people we are. On the surface, everyone acts polished and proper, but in truth, we're just a bunch of spoiled rich kids who love messing with people. Earlier, I had Miss Lee post in our group chat, asking everyone to play along in a classic over-the-top CEO romance novel scenario with Evelyn, and the unlucky soul picked to play the male lead was Diego, who had rolled the lowest number in a WeChat dice game. As Evelyn kept inching closer to Diego, messages began flooding the chat. Guess what her first line will be? No idea, but it better not be "Can you wire me some money?" Ha ha ha, you guys are terrible. I smiled and casually typed into the group. "Betting a bag of chips," she says. "Are you my sister's fiancé?" Diego immediately responded with a question mark. "Since when the hell did I become your Grim Reaper sister's fiancé?" Miss Lee jumped in right away. "I made up the character arc for you, adds depth. Don't you think?" Sure enough, the moment Evelyn reached Diego, he casually slipped his phone away, and the first thing he heard was, "Are you my sister's fiancé?" Diego twitched at the corner of his mouth. Oriana really called that one like a prophecy. And just like that, under the subtle instruction of the group chat, Diego and Evelyn's conversation ranged from poetry and music to mundane daily chores. They even ended up discussing how salted fish was going for 5 yuan per kilo at the wet market today. Evelyn still hadn't caught on to the joke. She even laughed and said, "Didn't expect young Master Ku to be such a domestic man, you even know the price of salted fish." Diego tugged awkwardly at his mouth, clearly not thrilled with the compliment. Meanwhile, Miss Lee, our little orchestrator, was laughing herself to death on the sofa. I finally couldn't take it and gave her a light shove. "Get a grip! Keep it down or they'll figure us out." And Diego was already howling in the group chat. "I'm begging you people, can we talk about something normal? I'm the heir to a freaking empire. How the hell would I know fish prices?" One of the more mischievous rich kids chimed in immediately. "Just say you're the seafood tycoon. You love keeping fish anyway. Those girls around you are all swimming obediently in your pond." The group erupted in laughter, leaving Diego to grit his teeth and keep humoring Evelyn, until finally, a servant from the Ku household came to find him. Diego took that as his cue to end the conversation politely and make his escape. Then Miss Lee posted in the chat again, "Evelyn looks real pleased with herself. Why don't we help set up a little one-on-one moment between her and Oriana, see what she says when they're alone?" The group, true agents of chaos, immediately voted yes. Unanimously. I laughed and told them to wait by the first-floor restroom in the banquet hall. Time to watch me and Evelyn face off in a private little showdown. Chapter 7. When I got up with the excuse of going to the restroom, Evelyn quickly followed. As I stepped out of the stall and began washing my hands, she deliberately blocked me at the doorway. "Sister, did you see? I had such a great conversation with your fiancé just now." I flicked the water off my fingers unhurriedly, then straightened up slowly and met her gaze. "And what exactly are you trying to say, Evelyn?" Evelyn had assumed that stealing my man would make me panic and threaten her, but instead, I looked at her like she was some street-performing monkey, calm and amused. She clenched her jaw, then gave a smug, arrogant smile. "I'm saying, I didn't expect you to be so unimpressive. Your friends treat me with warmth. Your fiancé is clearly attracted to me, while you're just a powerless clown screaming on the sidelines. You're not worthy of being the Mu family's daughter. I'm going to make you watch as I take your fortune, marry your fiancé, and become the most outstanding young lady of the Mu family." She burst out laughing like an idiot, then turned and walked away, head held high. I waited until she was gone before casually inspecting my nails. Honestly, this illegitimate girl was too low-level, not even worth wasting energy on. The girls who had been hiding in the bathroom stalls pushed the doors open, all of them wearing bored expressions. Miss Lee rolled her eyes. "Seriously? That's the IQ level of our so-called top dancer?" I shrugged. "She dances with her feet, not her brain. With that pig brain of hers, if she had to take an academic exam, she'd already be out waiting tables." When we returned to the banquet hall, the rich heirs and heiresses were gathered again, commenting on Evelyn's earlier performance. "These illegitimate kids really aren't very bright. Remember the one from the G family? Same deal, fell for the trap in seconds." Young Master Wang chimed in with a laugh. "People who dream about social climbing their way to the top are rarely clever. They all imagine they can hook a rich spouse just because they've got a fancy name attached to them, but in the end, they're just jokes in nice clothes." I nodded in agreement, added a few comments of my own. Then someone came over to let me know my mother was calling me. She wanted to take me to meet another group of guests. It wasn't until the banquet ended that I saw Evelyn again. She still looked radiant and polished, standing at the door, sending off guests like she belonged there. But when Diego passed by, the way she looked at him, all soft and dreamy-eyed, gave me goosebumps. My mother wasn't a fool either. After the guests had all left, she pulled me aside and asked what had happened. I told her everything, from start to finish, and when I got to the part where Evelyn cornered me in the restroom to talk big, even my usually serious mother couldn't help but laugh. Once she was done laughing, she patted me on the shoulder. "Don't take it too far. You'll scare her to death when she finally learns the truth." I nodded obediently, then grabbed her arm and continued chatting with her. Chapter 8. Evelyn completely bought into the prank from the night of the banquet. She told my father that Diego was interested in her, and begged him to help set up another meeting with Diego. But my father had already squandered all the family's wealth. Now he was nothing more than a fallen noble, entirely dependent on my mother to get by. Even something as small as arranging a meeting with Diego had to go through my mother. She looked Evelyn up and down, then calmly said, "Evelyn, take a piece of motherly advice. If something aligns with your current status, then it rightfully belongs to you. But if you try to reach too high for something that isn't yours, don't be surprised when you're humiliated and left with nothing." She sipped her tea as she spoke, smiling sweetly at Evelyn. But Evelyn clenched her teeth and insisted again that she wanted Diego to visit the Mu family home. Seeing how stubborn she was, my mother sighed heavily. But in the end, she still sent out an invitation to Madame Ku and Diego Ku. Evelyn, overjoyed, immediately ran off to find the butler and pick out a dress. My mother turned her head slightly and smiled as she asked me, "Oriana, do you know why your father is suddenly so eager to back this illegitimate girl?" Before I could answer, I saw a flicker of mockery flash in her eyes. She pulled up a photo on her phone and handed it to me. It was a prenatal checkup report. My mother sneered. "Evelyn's birth mother, her latest prenatal exam shows she's 3 months pregnant. And it's a boy. Looks like you're getting a little brother, Oriana." I turned my head slightly and saw the darkened look on her face. I gently took her hand. "Mom, it's only 3 months. We're not in a rush." She looked at me with concern, then smiled and nodded. "The next little while is going to be hard on the two of us. Once the dust settles, I'll personally deal with that disobedient old fool." To shatter Evelyn's little daydream, my mother's invitation was sent out. Madame Ku and Diego Ku were invited to the Mu mansion. Evelyn and I stood side by side at the front gate waiting for them. She wore a polished Chanel-style set, her face painted with delicate makeup, sparkling with expensive jewelry. She looked the part of a rich young lady. Meanwhile, I had my hair casually pinned back, yawning as I waited. Madame Ku stepped out of her luxury car right on time. When she saw me standing at the door, her eyes lit up. She rushed over and wrapped me in a hug, ruffling my hair. "It's been way too long since I last saw Oriana. Did you miss your auntie?" She acted as if Evelyn didn't exist, took my arm and walked straight into the house. From the corner of my eye, I saw Evelyn's face twist with barely concealed bitterness. Once we got to the living room, Madame Ku had Diego open the suitcase he'd carried in. It was filled with souvenirs and jewelry she had picked up for me on her recent trip abroad. Holding my hand, she enthusiastically introduced each item one by one. I smiled and nodded, clearly close with her. Diego, sitting nearby, looked at us and muttered bitterly, "Oriana, you really are lovable. My mom's obsessed with you." Before I could respond, Madame Ku gave him a sharp slap on the back. "You brat. If you were half as well behaved as Oriana, I wouldn't have to scold you every day." Then she took my hand again and started telling stories about her trip. My mother, noticing Evelyn's ever-changing expression, smiled and gently interrupted. "Don't just talk to Oriana. What do you think of my other daughter?" She patted Evelyn on the shoulder as she said this. Evelyn straightened her posture, smiling gracefully at Madame Ku. But Madame Ku only gave her a brief glance and offered a couple of perfunctory words, before going right back to chatting with me. I looked at Evelyn's stiff face, and my lips curled into a faint smile. She really thought she was somebody, didn't she? An illegitimate girl who truly believed that a pretty face could outshine me. The legitimate, powerful heiress of the Mu family? Keep dreaming. My mother, seeing Evelyn's embarrassment, decided to go for the kill. She suddenly grabbed Evelyn's hand and cheerfully guided her toward Madame Ku. "Madame Ku, Evelyn is about the same age as Oriana, and she graduated in dance. Since Diego is also close in age, why don't our families arrange a marriage?" As soon as she finished, the once lively living room fell dead silent. Evelyn's face lit up, just about to speak, when Madame Ku cut her off directly. She smiled warmly at my mother, looped her arm through hers, and said teasingly, "We've been best friends for decades, and you're still keeping secrets from me? Our Ku family doesn't take in illegitimate daughters. Besides, Oriana's so outstanding. You've known for years I want her as my daughter-in-law." Even I was surprised by how blunt she was. I raised an eyebrow and looked over at Evelyn, who was completely stunned by the outright rejection. She looked like she might shatter on the spot. Madame Ku's fond gaze landed on me again, while my mother gave a couple of awkward laughs, then quickly changed the subject, never mentioning the marriage proposal again. Chapter 9. That evening, when my father returned home, he was clearly still expecting my mother to announce an engagement with the Ku family. But even after dinner, she remained completely silent, unable to hold back any longer. He called Evelyn into his study. I brought a bowl of fruit under the excuse of delivering a snack, and stood just outside the door. It was easy to hear everything they said. My father was shouting, "Didn't you say Diego was really into you? That he liked you a lot? Then why is Madame Ku refusing the engagement now?" Evelyn's voice was choked with tears. She said she doesn't want an illegitimate daughter as a daughter-in-law. What could I do? She said she only wants Oriana, no one else. My father growled through clenched teeth. What's the point of marrying off Oriana? I wanted you to marry into the Ku family to solidify your status in City A. Once your little brother is born, I'll bring your mother and him back, then I'll finally have a son. He paused for a moment, then added, if Oriana marries into the Ku family, she and her mother will hold too many cards. We won't stand a chance. I'll go to the Ku family again tomorrow. That marriage must be stopped. The two of them continued whispering their little schemes. But honestly, none of that mattered anymore. I popped the last piece of fruit into my mouth, then turned and strolled away. As I passed the conservatory, I saw my mother sipping tea. When she spotted me, she smiled and waved me over. I walked toward her. She pulled me gently into her side and said, "Your Auntie Ku found the hospital where that wench has been hiding. It just so happens, it's a private hospital under the Ku group. That mistress went to Hong Kong recently to learn the baby's gender in secret, then had a minor incident on the flight back and was admitted for rest." I nodded, then asked, "So, Mother, when do you plan to act?" She patted my shoulder. "The sooner, the better. In 3 days. Help me keep an eye on Evelyn while I go deal with that shameless woman, to keep up appearances, and to comfort Evelyn after the engagement rejection." Madame Ku gave both of us a ticket. It was for the most popular dance performance in town, and in the VIP box, no less. That night, Evelyn and I attended the show. Madame Ku, being deeply involved in the performing arts field, was highly knowledgeable about dance. As she watched the lead dancer in red perform on stage, she narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. She's very skilled, but the one before her was even better. The previous lead had unmatched technique and expression. It's such a pity she died in that fire. Otherwise, this current dancer wouldn't even have made it to the spotlight. I glanced at Evelyn. Though Madame Ku hadn't said her name, her face instantly went pale. She looked like she might collapse any second. Then, out of nowhere, Madame Ku asked, "Evelyn, do you remember that girl who took the entrance exams with you? The one with the almond-shaped eyes? Why haven't we seen her around?" I turned my head slightly, just in time to catch Evelyn's panicked expression. When she realized she was being questioned, she quickly forced herself to stay calm. Her family had some urgent matters to deal with, so she gave up on this career path. Madame Ku nodded thoughtfully, a hint of regret in her tone. That's truly a shame. With her talent, she could have gone far. Watching Evelyn's increasingly complex expression, I narrowed my eyes slightly, as if something had just clicked. I picked up my phone, got up from my seat, and walked out to send a message. Chapter 10. 3 days later, I had Miss Lee invite Evelyn out under her own name, arranging to meet at a bar near their old high school. To support this illegitimate daughter, my father had gone to great lengths, enrolling her in a private school that was expensive but discreet. Evelyn, convinced that she and Miss Lee were genuine friends, happily agreed without hesitation. She carefully dressed up, painted her face with delicate makeup, and showed up at the bar in full glamour. The moment she got in the car, my mother, with her assistant in tow, headed straight for the Jiang family hospital, determined to drag the mistress out and force her to abort the baby. Meanwhile, I was already sitting in a booth inside the bar, smiling pleasantly as Evelyn arrived. Seated beside me were Diego, Miss Lee, and every single person who had been so warm and welcoming to her at the banquet. Evelyn's expression froze. It was like she'd sensed something, but she still didn't want to believe it. She forced a smile and asked Miss Lee, "Didn't you say it would just be the two of us hanging out? Why is Oriana here?" At that point, Miss Lee didn't even bother keeping up appearances. She looked Evelyn up and down, then sneered, "Don't lump me together with you. If Oriana hadn't asked me to call you, do you think I'd ever want to see you? You're a homewrecker's illegitimate daughter. Just looking at you makes me sick." Evelyn stared at her in disbelief, only to be stung even deeper by the other people around her who silently nodded in agreement. Even Diego gave her a look that clearly said he didn't care. And when she looked at him, silently begging for support, he answered bluntly, "I only talked to you because I lost a bet. I never had the slightest interest in you." Diego was Evelyn's final emotional lifeline. Tears welled up in her eyes as she pointed at me with a trembling hand. "Oriana, this is too much. What did I do wrong? I didn't choose to be born illegitimate. How could you humiliate me like this?" I was just lifting my coffee cup when she said that. A flicker of cold mockery flashed through my eyes. I looked up slowly, smiling faintly at her. "So what you're saying is, you think you're innocent, Evelyn?" I gave a cold laugh and clapped my hands. A server stepped forward with a glass of wine, holding it out to Evelyn. She shoved it away irritably, but as her eyes accidentally fell on the server's arm, she suddenly recoiled, like she'd been burned. I saw the fear on her face. She gasped, "Amanda? You're supposed to be dead." The server slowly lifted her head. Beneath heavy bangs was a face marred by disfigurement. The skin grafts from burn treatments didn't blend naturally with her original complexion, but it was still easy to tell how beautiful this girl must have been before. Amanda smiled at Evelyn. The twisted, scarred skin on her face crumpled together. It was terrifying. "You still remember, huh? That time you set my house on fire just to stop me from taking the entrance exam?" As she spoke, Amanda stepped closer and closer to Evelyn. Evelyn shrieked, jerking away like she touched a hot stove when Amanda's hand brushed her wrist. I looked at Evelyn, still smiling, but now with a chilling amusement tugging at the corners of my lips. "So, Evelyn, do you still think you're innocent?" Chapter 11. For people like us. Looking into Evelyn's background was never going to be difficult. While I had people investigating the place where she lived before rejoining the Move family, a girl wearing a mask suddenly stopped my assistant. She said she knew I was trying to find leverage on Evelyn, and that she was the leverage. She had been Evelyn's classmate for 3 years. They were once so close they even shared a pair of pants. It was Amanda who first discovered Evelyn's potential in dance, and helped her develop it. But Evelyn was vicious and petty. A simple disagreement, and she bore a grudge. To make matters worse, Amanda was far prettier than Evelyn, and her dancing skills were on a completely different level. Her family, while not wealthy, was solidly middle class. That only made Evelyn, already a girl full of resentment and insecurity, even more envious. So, before returning to the Move family, Evelyn took advantage of a reconciliation visit to Amanda's house. Amanda had been taking a nap at home. That day, Evelyn came to apologize, and left a fire behind. She burned the entire house down, killing Amanda's parents in their sleep. Amanda, the sole survivor, was left with severe burns over much of her body, making it impossible for her to ever dance again. Meanwhile, Evelyn was draped in gold and jewels, enjoying her life as the pampered second daughter of the Move family. How could Amanda not hate her? I looked at Evelyn, who was now staring in pure terror at Amanda's disfigured face. I kindly reminded her, "Amanda already has enough evidence to prove your arson was premeditated. Before the police get here, maybe you two should settle some of the unofficial debts first." And with that, I led the group out of the bar, standing outside, even through the thick soundproof walls. I could hear Evelyn's heart-wrenching screams from inside. Chances are, Amanda broke her legs. That was what Amanda had told me in advance, that Evelyn needed to pay for what she had done. I thought about it lazily, and made my way home. When I got back, Mother was already waiting in the living room. On the table sat a delicate little box. She smiled and said it was a gift for my father. Given what I knew about where she'd been that morning, I immediately realized what was inside. A small smile crept across my face as well. I sat with her on the couch, and waited for my father to come home. Ever since that mistress got pregnant, my father rarely stayed over at her place anymore. The private club he frequented, I had acquired a controlling interest in it not long ago. Now I was the largest shareholder. It helped me monitor his movements. And, more importantly, prevent another bastard child from being born. But even with all that planning, there are always gaps in the net. So the most effective solution now was to deal with him directly. By the time he returned from the club, the sun was already setting. My mother and I sat on the sofa, watching this weary man drag himself step by step toward us. Stripped of the carefully styled hair, the expensive cologne, and the luxury suit, all he really was a middle-aged shell of a man, 50-something years old, already fading, just a hollow pile of flesh soaked in wine. My mother stood up with a soft smile, picked up the box from the table, and handed it to him. "Darling, come see the gift I prepared for you." His alcohol-soaked brain took a moment to register. He finally took the box, managed a weak smile toward her, and muttered, "Thanks." When he finally opened the box and saw what was inside, it took him a moment to register it. His eyes widened as he stared at the contents in shock. Then he looked up at my mother, terrified, but her expression remained gentle, even as her words sent chills down his spine. 3 months in, it's already taken shape. Since you love your son so much, I thought I'd give him to you early. Do you like your gift? After she finished speaking, I tilted my head slightly, with a sweet smile on my face. I looked at him and said, "Daddy, first it was that filthy mistress, then Evelyn, so next, it's your turn." Before my father could run, the butler outside stepped in and pinned him to the ground. Mother leaned down with a pleasant smile, looking down on him. "All of this began with you. If not for you, there wouldn't have been a mistress. There wouldn't have been an illegitimate daughter. So, aren't you the one most deserving of punishment?" She continued, still smiling. "To prevent you from ever undoing a vasectomy in the future, this is the only solution left. The doctor will be here soon to take away your tools. Once the operation's done, I'll find a peaceful little nursing home for you to spend the rest of your life." And with that, she waved her hand, ignoring his desperate struggles. The men dragged him away. As for me, all I had to say was, he brought this upon himself. He deserves whatever comes next. On the day Evelyn's sentence was pronounced, I stood outside the courthouse, waiting for Amanda to come out. She no longer wore a mask. She let her disfigured face be seen by everyone. Unashamed, when she saw me at the door, she approached, and I handed her a card. With a calm expression, I said, "This is everything Evelyn owned. I sold all the jewelry my father gave her, every house and sports car under her name. It totals over 50 million yuan. You can use it for treatment, or go somewhere quiet and beautiful to heal." Amanda took the card and nodded silently, then turned away without looking back. After Evelyn's verdict was announced, she was sent to prison. I paid her one last visit. Her once beautiful hair had been shaved clean. What little had grown back was yellowed and brittle. Her proud dancer's physique had wasted away to skin and bone. When she saw me, she forced a faint smile. "Come to enjoy the show? Well, I guess that's fair. Winner takes all." After all, I looked at her face, no longer the one I used to know, and said calmly, "I'm not here for a show. I'm just here to inform you, every asset you had is now in Amanda's hands. As for my father's wealth, you get nothing. Not a single cent of the Mu family fortune is yours. You once mocked me, said I relied on others to rise. But now look around you. All the things you schemed and clawed your way to get, how much of it do you still have?" I adjusted my jacket, stood up, and turned to leave. I didn't look back, even as she started screaming behind the glass like a lunatic. My father had been taken away. His mistress would be sent abroad once her injuries healed. And Evelyn would spend the rest of her life repenting behind bars. Everything had settled, and now, it was time for me to move on, to walk toward a brighter future. Story 2. After being reborn, I took back all the kindness I had shown Eric. I no longer starved myself to save a bun for him, nor did I work endless part-time jobs day and night just so he could focus on his studies without worries. In my past life, Eric hid most of his salary and secretly gave it to Julia to start her business. Later, when I was coughing up blood every day due to stomach cancer, and he had already achieved fame and success, he told me we no longer shared the same values. He begged me to let him and Julia, the so-called star-crossed lovers, be together. This time, I will grant his wish. I opened the calendar and looked at the countdown to the college entrance exam. I decided to walk a path that had nothing to do with him. Chapter 1. When my cousin handed me the borrowed college entrance exam prep books, she teased me. You borrowed these for Eric, didn't you? You really go all out for him now that the college entrance exams are back. If he gets into university, you can finally enjoy a better life. I smiled but said nothing. My cousin guessed wrong. These books were for me, and in the future, my days with Eric would hold no sweetness, only endless bitterness. Fortunately, I no longer plan to stay with him. Chapter 2. From now on, I no longer have to starve myself day after day. No more saving food to feed Eric. No more working tirelessly at a food stall, enduring people's cold stares and mockery, just to support his studies in all seasons. In my past life, Eric eventually became successful. He became a teacher, a professor. Then he looked down on me, calling me an embarrassment for running a food stall in public, tarnishing his reputation as a prestigious university professor. He dumped his paralyzed mother on me. Stay home and take care of mom. At least that way you won't humiliate me anymore. I took the meager household allowance he gave me, cooking delicious meals for our spoiled daughter while enduring his mother's bad temper. Every day, I fed her, bathed her, and cared for her. Most days, I barely had time to eat a few scraps before dragging myself to bed to face another day. I didn't even know how much Eric earned. I constantly scrimped and saved to provide the best for our family. When hunger became unbearable, I drank cold water in the middle of the night, pretending it could numb my stomach and make the hunger go away. It wasn't until later that I found out the truth. Eric had hidden most of his salary and secretly given it to Julia to start her business. Years passed, his mother died, and our daughter grew up, and I was left with nothing but a body full of illnesses. By then, Eric despised me even more. He said I couldn't understand his ambitions and had no way of connecting with his intellect. He said I was just a housewife and we no longer spoke the same language. Clutching his head as if in pain, he told me he had suffered enough, as if he were the victim. Even our daughter said, "Mom, let Dad go. Don't you see that every day with you is nothing but misery for him? Julia has waited for him all these years. He wasted his life with you. Let him spend the rest of his days peacefully with Julia." Compared to me, a clueless housewife, Julia had become a powerful businesswoman who could casually gift our daughter luxury cars and designer bags. She took her to high-end venues and introduced her to influential people. But it was me who had painstakingly taught her to speak, word by word, when she was learning to talk. It was me who had carried her on my back through the rain to the hospital when she had a high fever at night. I smashed everything in the house in a fit of rage. I swore I wouldn't let those ungrateful wolves have an easy life. They looked at me then as if I were insane. Soon after, Eric and our daughter moved into Julia's house without hesitation. When my stomach cancer flared up and I was vomiting blood on the floor, they were traveling the country together like a happy family of 3. Their photos were posted online. A renowned scholar and a wealthy business elite. Everyone said they were a perfect match. So I decided to grant Eric and Julia their wish. I no longer wanted him, and I would never give birth to that ungrateful daughter. This time, I would walk a path without them. Chapter 3. When I returned home, Eric was in the kitchen cooking noodles. He used 1 pound of fine flour that he had exchanged for 10 pounds of coarse grains. He made a soup base with eggs and added vegetables that I had grown. He prepared a bowl of colorful and fragrant noodle soup and served it to Julia. Julia, wearing a floral blouse, stood beside him, sniffing softly and speaking in a sweet voice. "It smells so good. Eric, you're such a great cook. I wish I could eat your noodles every day." In the village, food was still distributed based on work points, and both Julia and Eric were educated youths sent to the countryside. When Eric first arrived, he couldn't even dig the soil properly. Julia was even more useless. On her first day, she injured her toe and rested at the youth station for half a month. During the harvest, they received only a small amount of grain and barely had enough to eat each day. At that time, they were so hungry their eyes glowed green. Even the roughest grains that scratched their throats were swallowed with effort. Until Eric saved me from drowning. We were caught embracing, drenched, and rumors spread throughout the village. He had no choice but to marry me. After we got married, we earned more work points. He exchanged most of the coarse grains for fine white flour, and Julia became a frequent guest at our home. Eric smiled and said, "If you like it, come over often. You don't eat much anyway." When he turned and saw me, his expression froze awkwardly. Previously, he only cooked for Julia when I wasn't around. This was the first time I caught him red-handed. Julia, however, looked completely innocent. "Zoe, you're back?" Eric made noodles. "Do you want some?" Her casual demeanor made her seem more like the lady of the house than me. Of course, it was Eric who gave her that confidence. I smirked coldly and said to Eric, "From now on, our work points will be counted separately, and we'll eat separately too." Before, he did this because he knew that no matter how hungry I was, I would always make sure he was fed first. But this time, I wouldn't be so foolish. Before Eric could say anything, Julia was already on the verge of tears. "Zoe, don't blame Eric. It's my fault. Please don't argue. I won't come here again." She ran out crying, and Eric looked at me with disappointment. "Zoe, do you really have to be so harsh? What happened to you in the past?" This tactic always worked on me. Back then, my whole world revolved around him. He was an educated youth, tall and refined, completely different from the sweaty, rough men in the countryside. If he hadn't saved me from drowning, we never would have ended up together. My insecurities made me constantly care about his opinion, treating him like a god to be worshipped. I was afraid of upsetting him, but now, I simply gave a cold smile. "Think whatever you want." Chapter 4. Eric was stunned by the coldness on my face. He stared at me for a long time without speaking. I ignored him and went into my room alone. A few minutes later, Eric left with the bowl in his hands, chasing after Julia. Of course, he had specially made those noodles for Julia. He wouldn't feel at ease until he personally fed them to her. A sharp pain twisted inside me. I thought that, having lived another lifetime, the wounds had long been buried by time. But it turned out, it wasn't so easy to let go. The bitterness and resentment were like scars deeply etched into my heart. They reminded me over and over again. I shifted my gaze to the calendar and heavily circled the date of the college entrance exam. In my previous life, I had the chance to take the exam too. Although I grew up in the village, I had studied until my first year of high school. But when the exam system was restored, I was already married to Eric. The family had no money, and someone had to work to support the household. Naturally, that person was me. By the time I finally put Eric through his studies and picked up my books again, our daughter's cries echoed through the house. Eric stormed out of his study, annoyed, asking if I knew how to be a mother and how I could be so heartless to ignore our child. I suggested he lend a hand, but he snapped at me, demanding to know how the family would survive if he didn't work. And so, I compromised step by step, until wrinkles crept into the corners of my eyes, and time slipped away. In the quiet, lonely nights, I used to hold that year's exam prep book and read it over and over again, as if that was the only way to fill the void in my heart. Now that fate has given me another chance, I won't let anyone stand in my way. I opened my book and silently vowed, 1 month, just one more month, time would pass quickly. Chapter 5. Eric returned home late at night. He looked at the cold, empty kitchen and seemed visibly confused. No matter how late he used to come home, there was always hot food and warm water waiting for him. It had only been one day, and he already felt unsettled, especially when he saw that I had moved his belongings into the woodshed. He lingered outside the door for a long time. Just as I was about to fall asleep, his voice drifted in. "What happened today was my fault. But Julia isn't an outsider. We came to the countryside together from the city. She's just a girl, unfamiliar with this place. Of course, as her older brother, I have to take care of her. She's used to eating fine food in the city and can't stomach coarse grains. She's lost weight because of it. How could I ignore her as her brother?" Brother? What a convenient excuse. In my previous life, this so-called brother ended up sharing a bed with his dear sister. The room fell silent again, leaving only the sound of our breathing. After what felt like an eternity, Eric's voice came again, muffled. "If it bothers you so much, I won't let her come over for meals anymore." I turned over and pretended not to hear him. I knew that no matter how many promises he made, it was useless. As long as Julia shed a few tears and pleaded with him sweetly, he would forget all his so-called principles. I had long since gotten used to it. Chapter 6. In the days that followed, I went to work as usual and squeezed every spare moment into studying. Eric had planned to focus on his studies during this final stretch, but after I separated our food supplies, he had to spend his days swinging a hoe to earn work points to sustain himself and continue providing fine flour for Julia. Rumors began to spread in the village. People whispered that I was eating white bread buns every day while deliberately keeping Eric tied down, preventing him from preparing for the exam and forcing him to stay trapped in the countryside with me. There had been other cases of educated youths marrying local girls in the village before, but once those men found an opportunity, they did everything they could to return to the city, leaving their wives and children behind. After all, going back to the city didn't stop them from marrying someone else and starting a new life. When people asked Eric about the rumors, he mumbled vague responses, never clarifying the truth. This only made the gossip more believable. I found out about the rumors 5 days later. The neighbor lady looked at me with approval and said, "You're a clever girl. Men need to be tied down and managed properly. What's the point of university and studying? Once they achieve something, they'll fly away." I knew that. Besides pretending to defend me, she was mostly here to enjoy the drama. In their eyes, a village girl like me didn't deserve someone like Eric, who came from the city. So naturally, they assumed I'd do anything to keep him tied down. The thought made me sick. I was about to respond when a voice came from behind me. "Sis." I turned around and saw Marco, drenched in sweat, carrying a large sack. He entered the house, panting, and patted the sack of grain with a grin. "Sis, if you want white flour, just let me know. You can have as much as you want. This is an important time. Let Eric stay home and study properly. Once he gets into university, he can take you to the city for a better life." Chapter 7. My mom passed away when I was 5, and Marco was only 2. Not long after, my dad remarried, although he tried his best to take care of us. Growing up under a stepmother was never easy, especially after my dad had more children. I didn't know how Marco managed to get this grain, but seeing him, at an age where he should be growing strong, looking as thin as a stick of bamboo, I couldn't help but feel my eyes sting. Marco panicked. "Sis, what happened? Did Eric bully you? Tell me, and I'll take care of him." In my past life, after I moved to the city, my life was in shambles. Marco came to visit me at that time. He had stayed in the countryside, living a hard life, but when he saw me eating plain rice with pickled vegetables, his eyes turned red. He shoved the last 200 yuan he had into my hands. When I chased after him, his 30-something frame, hunched and frail, ran away as fast as he could, as if afraid I'd catch up. In that household, I wasn't allowed to complain as a mother and wife. I was nothing more than an uneducated village girl living in Eric's shadow. It had been a long time since I had felt such unconditional care. I smiled and said, "I'm fine, Marco. I'm doing well." But tears streamed down my face without me realizing it. Chapter 8. I quickly made up an excuse and sent Marco away. I knew he didn't believe me, but I couldn't add to his burdens anymore. By evening, Eric returned from work. When he saw the pile of grain, his face lit up at first. Then, as if recalling something, he looked embarrassed and said, "Did your family visit?" I sneered. "Yes. They heard rumors that I was hoarding white flour while forcing my husband to work himself to death. They were worried I'd drown in other people's spit." Eric's face flushed red. "I know I've wronged you, but this has nothing to do with Julia. She's a city girl. She can't handle rumors like these. I was just worried about her." He trailed off, but I knew what he meant. Back then, when our daughter suddenly fell ill with a high fever and needed hospitalization, I had already spent all our money on household expenses. In the end, we had to borrow money from Eric's colleagues to cover the medical bills. His coworker even asked curiously, "Professor, your salary isn't low. How come you don't even have enough for an emergency?" Eric didn't dare admit that he had given most of his salary to Julia. Instead, he blamed me. He said he handed all his wages to me, only for me to squander it recklessly until there was nothing left. By the time I found out, I already had a reputation in Eric's circle as a wasteful and selfish woman. Everyone sympathized with him for having married someone like me. Even our neighbors pitied him. Zoe, I know you don't have much education. You're living well every day. But look at Eric, his suit is already frayed. If you keep this up, one day he'll leave you, and you'll regret it. I was so angry that I confronted him about why he treated me like this. But Eric acted like he was in the right. What's wrong with people saying a few things about you? You're just a housewife and don't go out much anyway. Julia is different. She runs a business. And reputation is everything. We can't let rumors affect her. Time may have turned back. But Eric was still the same Eric. He hadn't changed. I didn't want to say another word to him. As I turned to leave, Eric stopped me. He looked nervous and said, Zoe, can you not bring this up with Julia? She's a sensitive girl. I promise. Once I get into college and we move back to the city, I'll stop seeing her. We'll have a good life together. It felt like a saw was ripping through my chest, tearing my heart apart piece by piece. I knew it was that buried resentment bubbling to the surface again. I wanted to scream, just like I did in my past life. I wanted to ask him why he treated me this way. Why was Julia's dignity worth protecting while mine wasn't? But instead, I lowered my gaze and hid all my emotions. Some words are meaningless no matter how many times you say them. You can't wake someone who pretends to be asleep. I forced a smile and looked at him coldly. Don't worry. I won't go looking for trouble. Then I turned back to my room and stared at the marked date on the calendar. I told myself, Zoe, you don't have to endure much longer. Just 20 more days. And you'll finally be free. Chapter 9. Not only would I refrain from exposing this lie, but I would also make sure this fragile balance stayed intact. Eric thought he had all the time in the world, but he didn't know this was his only chance to take the college entrance exam. Once he returned to the city, his lazy and greedy brothers would have already taken over the family's house and jobs, and his sharp-tongued mother wouldn't support his education. Instead, she'd drain him dry to support her other sons. By then, with no money, no home, no job, and Julia constantly depending on him, where would Eric find the strength to try again? But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. The exam date was drawing closer each day, and I didn't want to waste any more time with him. Maybe out of guilt, Eric stopped visiting Julia in the following days. Even the food he sent her was delivered by other educated youths. He began leaving early and returning late. One day, he even brought back a nest of bird eggs. I remembered when we had just married. He had done the same thing, brought me bird eggs from the forest. Back then, I cooked them, and we each had one, sharing sweet smiles. But now, the sight of them only made me feel sick. Did he think I was so easily placated, that he could slap me and then make it better with a piece of candy? Chapter 10. Faced with these changes, the first to lose patience was Julia. That day, while I was gathering firewood in the back hills, she blocked my path. Julia wore a light pink blouse, the slightly open collar revealing her fair neck. She looked like a delicate flower about to bloom, completely out of place in this rural village, even more out of place compared to someone like me, who had grown up rooted in the soil. She noticed my wandering gaze, and a hint of pride flashed in her eyes. Beautiful, isn't it? Eric bought this for me. She thought I would be angry. But I wasn't. In my past life, Eric had given her far more. Startup money for her business, connections to expand her network. I used to cry myself to sleep over it and argued with him countless times. But eventually, I grew tired of fighting and stopped caring. Seeing that I was about to leave, Julia blocked my way again. Zoe, do you really think Eric would have ever looked at you if you hadn't faked drowning to make him save you? Eric doesn't belong to you. Much less to this remote village. He has dreams and ambitions. Once he gets into college, the world will open up for him. Do you really think you'll still deserve him then? Julia had said the same words in my past life. Back then, she sat in a luxury car, looking down on me with disdain as I returned from the market with groceries. Eric married you to have children and take care of his mother. You're no different from a maid. But his money and love, those were always mine. At the time, her words felt like daggers stabbing my heart. But now, I only laughed coldly. Are you done? If you liked him so much, Why didn't you get together with him before we got married? Back then, Julia had been flirting with the village chief's son, hoping to use their connections to get back to the city. But when the college entrance exams were reinstated, she realized she hadn't studied at all and had no chance of passing. So she turned back to Eric. Julia's face twisted awkwardly. And then suddenly, with a loud thud, she dropped to her knees. Tears welled up in her eyes in an instant. Zoe, I promise I'll stay away from Eric. Please. I beg you. Don't report this, it will ruin his future. Before I could make sense of her sudden breakdown, she pushed me and rolled herself down the slope. I fell to the ground, my ankle sliced open by the scattered firewood. Blood trickled down, drop by drop. But before I could react, a figure dashed past me, running straight toward Julia. By the time I managed to get up, I saw Eric holding Julia, her clothes muddy but completely unharmed. He frowned, his eyes cold as he looked at me. I told you before, if you're angry, take it out on me. Why are you making trouble for someone else? Someone else? I pulled up my torn pant leg, exposing the bleeding wound, and said coldly, when did you go blind? Does this look like something someone does to herself? Eric's gaze fell on the blood and wavered for a moment. But Julia, with tears in her eyes, tugged at his sleeve pitifully. Eric, it's my fault. Just blame me. I was scared. She said she'd report us to the commune. If you end up with a bad record, you might not be able to take the exam. She sobbed harder and suddenly collapsed into Eric's arms, pale as a sheet. And Eric believed her. Or maybe he just needed an excuse to justify his already biased heart. He gave me a cold look before turning and leaving with Julia in his arms. Watching their backs disappear, I loosened my clenched fists, and the coldness in my heart seemed to gradually fade. It didn't matter. Only 10 days left. I could endure this. Chapter 11. To comfort the overly distraught Julia, Eric came home very late. From that day on, it seemed he had finally found an excuse to meet with Julia again and again, even at night. I didn't know what they did outside, nor did I care. Lying in bed, I kept replaying the questions and passages I had studied during the day. This young body was amazing. In my past life, when I was older, I had to read an article 10 or even 100 times, and still couldn't remember it. Now, I found everything already deeply ingrained in my mind. The feeling reassured me. But even as I fell asleep, a strange sense of unease lingered in my heart. It felt as if I had forgotten something important. It wasn't until I was startled awake by a loud noise in the middle of the night that I suddenly remembered. In my previous life, it was around this time when a heavy rainstorm hit. The house Eric and I lived in had been vacated for the educated youths, but it was old and in disrepair. Under the pounding rain, it finally collapsed. Back then, both Eric and I had been away. But this time, I was here to face it head-on. Raindrops the size of beans pelted my face and body. A deafening clap of thunder split the sky, illuminating the scattered tiles and fallen beams around me. Looking at the crumbling house, I shivered and began groping my way through the darkness under the rain. Heaven had given me a second chance. I hadn't yet passed the exam. I hadn't yet given Marco a better life. I couldn't die here. But just then, the wall beside me, soaked and weakened by the rain, gave way with a loud crash. Collapsing toward me, the heavy debris pinned down my lower body, as if shackling me in place. I struggled and screamed for help, but amid the relentless downpour, no one could hear me. I suddenly felt a deep hatred toward fate for giving me a second chance only to torment me like this. Hatred toward Eric. If he hadn't gone to see Julia today, I wouldn't have ended up like this. But most of all, I hated myself. I had been so focused on preparing for the exam that I had forgotten something this important. The rain kept pouring, as if trying to wash away the last traces of warmth from my body. Just as my consciousness began to fade, I heard someone calling my name. I forced my eyes open and saw Marco braving the rain, digging at the mud with his bare hands while crying and laughing. Sis, don't fall asleep. I'll get you out soon. Somebody, help. My sister is here. Come and give me a hand. Responding to his cries, my dad arrived with more people. As the crowd worked together to lift me to safety, someone suddenly remembered. Wait, what about Eric? Is he still buried under there? Quick, check for him. But they didn't need to search for long, because Eric was standing under an umbrella, holding Julia close, right there in the crowd. Chapter 12. The sudden incident caused most of the villagers to gather around. Some held torches. Others carried kerosene lamps, illuminating the clearing brightly. Eric stood in the crowd. When he saw my condition, his face changed, and he dropped his umbrella, rushing toward me. But Marco was faster. He kicked Eric to the ground and pinned him down in the mud, punching him repeatedly. "You bastard! Where were you when my sister was in danger? Where were you? Do you even realize she almost died just now?" Julia let out a sharp scream and tried to pull Marco away. Instead, Marco slapped her across the face. "You shameless woman! I've tolerated you long enough. You've been living off the white bread my sister's husband gave you, and you still have the audacity to cling to her? Are you so low that you can only feel happy stealing someone else's man?" Eric leaving his wife in the middle of the night to appear with Julia had already raised suspicions among the crowd. Marco's words only fanned the flames. "I told you there was something fishy between those two. I saw Eric bringing things to Julia more than once. When I asked him, he said Zoe told him to do it. Tisk. TSK. You can't trust these city men, even after getting married. They can't stay loyal and keep flirting with other women. And that Julia is even worse. She knew he had a wife but still clung to him. Is that what city people call class?" The villagers' voices rang out one after another, making Julia's face flush with shame. She turned to Eric with tears in her eyes. "Eric." But Eric still seemed dazed. He struggled to get up. "Marco, let me go. I need to check on Zoe." Ignored by Eric, Julia sobbed, covering her face as she ran away under the villagers' judgmental stares. The rain poured even harder. My father glanced at my pale face and called out to Marco, who was still poised to strike. Marco threw one last punch, knocking Eric flat on the ground. With rage in his eyes, Marco spat at him. "Don't think my sister is someone you can bully. I'll let this slide for now, but if it happens again, I'll kill you." With the situation over, the crowd slowly dispersed. Only Eric remained, lying motionless in the rain, under the dark night sky. Eric and I, step by step, drifted further and further apart, just like in our previous life. Chapter 13. Since I got married, there was no longer a place for me in my family's home. The village chief had to temporarily arrange a storage room for me to stay in. Once I was settled, my father left quickly, urged by my stepmother. Everything that had happened today felt so sudden. I sat there staring blankly at the empty walls until I suddenly remembered the textbooks that had been left in the mud. I jumped up in panic. Marco stopped me and handed me a bundle. "Sis, is this what you're looking for?" I took the package and, seeing the books intact inside, I couldn't hold back my tears of relief. Thank goodness, thank goodness." Marco looked at me and asked, "Sis, are you planning to take the college entrance exam?" I didn't know when he had figured it out or when he had learned about Eric and Julia. To be honest, I felt like I had failed as a sister. I nodded bitterly. Marco pressed on. "What about him?" "I'm going to divorce him." Marco's eyes widened in shock, and he was silent for a long time. I knew he was the type to stand up for me, to beat Eric up and even force him to apologize. But he had never considered divorce as an option. In this era, just the mention of divorce, even if it was Eric's fault, would leave me branded with shame, simply because I was a woman. Marco was about to say something when we suddenly heard a knock at the door. Eric's muffled voice came through. "Zoe, are you there?" "It's me." Marco's eyes flashed with anger. "I'll make him leave." I stopped him. Some things needed to be said, and there were words I had been holding back for far too long. Chapter 14. Eric stood at the door, drenched from head to toe, his face covered in bruises left by Marco. Yet, he looked at me with concern. "Zoe, are you hurt?" The worry in his eyes didn't seem fake, but I only found it ironic. I didn't see the point of his words now. Calmly, I said, "Eric, let's get a divorce." A flash of lightning streaked across the sky, freezing the expression on Eric's face. After a long pause, his lips trembled. "Zoe, I know you're angry. What happened today was my fault. I shouldn't have been away when you were in danger. I'll change. I promise this will never happen again." I was done wasting words. I said directly, "What about Julia?" Are you going to abandon your dear sister? Are you still trying to justify your divided heart as sibling affection? How long are you going to deceive yourself? As if I had struck a nerve, Eric's lips moved soundlessly before he finally said, "No, it's not like that. I was just looking after Julia for a while. I've already written to my family, saying I'll take you back to the city with me. I've planned for us to spend the rest of our lives together." Really? But I no longer cared. Eric's eyes dimmed, and he forced a weak smile. "It's okay. I'll wait for you to think it through. We still have so much time ahead of us. I know you'll forgive me someday." I didn't reply. I simply shut the door in his hopeful face. Only 3 days left. Soon, I would start a new life, a life without Eric. There was nothing more to say between us. Chapter 15. On the day of the college entrance exam, Marco saw me off early in the morning. At the exam site, I saw Eric and Julia standing beside him. Julia seemed to be talking to him, but he looked distracted until he noticed us. Eric had loitered outside my house several times over the past few days. Whether he was pleading or acting pitiful, I had refused to see him. Now, seeing me, he hurried over, speaking gently, almost ingratiatingly. "Zoe, did you come to see me off? Don't worry, I'll do my best. Once we're back in the city, I'll make sure you live a good life." Before I could speak, Marco cut in coldly. "You're overthinking it. My sister's here to take the exam herself." "The exam? Her?" Julia exclaimed, her face full of disdain. To her, the college entrance exam was something for the educated youths. It had nothing to do with a village girl like me. Even Eric looked surprised. It was almost funny. Marco had noticed I was preparing for the exam. But Eric, who lived with me, hadn't. Eric opened his mouth to say something, but the exam bell rang. I followed the crowd, brushing past him and leaving him far behind. This exam was something I had longed for my entire life. At that moment, I wanted nothing more than to focus every ounce of my energy on it. Eric, Julia, they no longer mattered. Chapter 16. 3 days passed quickly. After the exam, I didn't return to the village. My cousin had a small clothing shop in the neighboring town. Knowing I wanted to save money, she introduced me to work there. Every day, I woke up at dawn to clean the shop, organize the merchandise, and greet each customer with a smile before sending them off the same way. Here, I felt unusually fulfilled, almost forgetting the passage of time, until one day, Marco burst in, panting heavily. He grabbed my hand excitedly, his face practically glowing with joy. "Sis, you got in. You passed the exam and got into university." My heart nearly jumped out of my chest. My hands trembled as I held the acceptance letter I had dreamed of in my past life. Tears streamed down my face without me even noticing. Finally, I had escaped the fate of my past life. From now on, I will walk a brand new path. Marco wiped my tears while grinning proudly. "Sis, you won't believe this. Out of everyone in the village, only you and one other educated youth passed. Eric and Julia didn't make it. It's hilarious. They were so full of themselves before, and now they're the laughingstock." I wasn't surprised. Eric was intelligent, but he had been too distracted by Julia to focus on studying. As for Julia, she hadn't passed in my past life either. Calmly, I asked, "Did you handle what I asked you to?" Marco had initially opposed my divorce, but over time, I proved to him that, even without Eric, I could live just fine. Not only that, but I had gotten into university. He raised an eyebrow confidently. "It's done. I read your divorce letter in front of the village chief and Eric. Sis, you should have seen his face. It was like he'd been hit with a brick. He turned pale as a ghost. He kept saying he wouldn't accept it and that he'd wait for you forever." TSK. Acting all heartbroken now. Where was this act before? I smiled indifferently. No matter how Eric reacted, it no longer moved me in the slightest. He was just a stranger now. From this point on, our lives would never intersect again. Chapter 17. The last time I saw Eric was 6 years later. By then, I had already graduated, secured a job, and even gotten engaged. That day, Marco came to the provincial capital and invited us out for dinner. After I got into university, I brought him along with me. This era was full of business opportunities. At first, I taught him how to set up a small stall outside the school gates. Once the business started doing well, he began wholesaling goods from Guangzhou to resell. His business grew bigger and bigger. He bought a house and a car. When we met for dinner, Marco was dressed in a sharp suit, exuding confidence and success, looking more polished than most city folks. As we walked out of the restaurant after finishing our meal, we spotted a hunched, limping man drawing sugar art for children at a roadside stall not far away. When he saw me, panic flashed across his face. He abandoned his money and hurriedly pushed his cart away, limping as he ran. It was Eric, 6 years later. Over the years, I had occasionally heard about him. Marco, still holding a grudge, often found ways to inquire about his situation. I knew that after Eric returned to the city, he ended up marrying Julia. He had planned to retake the college entrance exam, but without money and without someone willing to support him, he eventually gave up. Unable to find a stable job, he started selling goods at a street stall. But Julia, accustomed to a comfortable life, couldn't stand it. She had followed Eric hoping for a better life and refused to wake up early and work hard at the stall. One day, she scammed a large sum of money under Eric's name and abandoned him and their newborn daughter. Unable to track her down, the creditors broke Eric's leg and stationed themselves outside his home, demanding repayment. And so, he became what he was now. Marco sneered at the pathetic sight before us. My fiancé, curious, asked, "Who was that? Why did he run when he saw us?" I withdrew my gaze and replied calmly, "Just someone irrelevant. Don't worry about him. Let's go."